Hey everyone, it is Thursday, September 29th, 2022. Welcome to TechTO Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Reilly, and here are today's headlines. AvidBots cleans up with a $70 million US raise. Is Real Ventures really refocusing on Montreal? We will find out. And BDC is putting $500 million towards closing the gender gap. Alex Norman joins me now to help break all this down. Hi, Alex.
Hey Alex, interesting a couple weeks. We haven't done this in
Mhm.
2 weeks, and not much news, but some interesting news.
Yeah, it's nice to have, I think, a little bit more variety to talk about today. So, with that being said, why don't we dive into the AvidBots news first? First of all, who is AvidBots and what is the news around this raise?
So, AvidBots is a Kitchener-Waterloo-based startup founded in 2014 that builds autonomous floor cleaning robots. So, you want your place clean? This is like Roomba, but much better for enterprises. The news is, look, they closed a $70 million round,
And
USD, and
yeah,
we haven't
and
seen big rounds like this in a while.
right. And just like talking more about the raise, we obviously talked about how that looks a lot different now, just given the current market. So, how were they able to raise in this environment?
Well, from whenever you read, they have 1,000 of these robots being used across 5 continents, um, with different enterprises buying at this. Anyone from manufacturing to airports, education. So they have looks like a clear sign of product market fit. If you look into what they're saying, they have this. There's been an actually increase in demand since COVID, due to labor shortages, and also they're finding new ways to add add-ons, which could probably improve the lifetime value. So it looks like a company that has growth, product market fit, accelerating growth, and probably better unit economics as it scales.
Yeah, and why would they raise and sort of what is that going to be going towards to help improve or whatnot?
So, you know, they're a manufacturer.
Mhm.
So, you know, they have to they're dealing with atoms. They're not dealing with bits. So they need space to test and build new models. They need to test space and people, engineers and other people to actually test the add-ons.
Right.
So this is going to basically increase the actual footprint they have. They're almost doubling their size of their headquarters, and it's going to increase the number of employees they have significantly.
And just on the investor side, is there anything interesting that you wanted to highlight about the investors involved in this round?
Yeah, the round was led by Generation Capital. That's with a J, not a G,
Hmm.
um, which historically invests in Greater China tech companies, and that and what's interesting, Avid has operations in Hong Kong, Singapore, and China. So what's interesting here is they're not a firm I've seen do investment in Canada. They seem to focus in China, and Avid seems to be interesting to them because they have exposure to the Greater China area. What's also interesting is Real Ventures of 500 Startups Canada did not participate in this round, did not take the pro rata. 500 Startups Canada makes sense. They haven't been around for a while, so I'm not sure if they have any capital. Real is more interesting. We'll talk about that a bit later.
Yes, we will get into that later. Lastly, takeaways for our community and anything else worth highlighting or noting.
Well, so let's start with why this appears to have product market fit.
Hmm.
Um, you have a labor shortage which started before COVID and has been accelerated. So cleaning floors at a school, an airport is not exactly anyone's dream job. So it always suffered from high employee absenteeism and turnover. So there was probably, if you could prove you could do it without any employees, there's probably demand, especially if you, I don't know what it costs, economics or return on investment, but just knowing someone's going to clean the floors or clean a place is very valuable. Second of all, um, unlike someone that might be cleaning the floor, this provides a lot of data and information. So you can actually see, what's being taken care of, what's being cleaned. So building a product for what long-term trends benefit is always beneficial. But if you look at the bigger picture, we haven't seen many late stage financings announced
Hmm.
in Canada in the last little while, and definitely haven't seen many robotic ones. Um, this goes back to you know it's easy to get talk about the current market, what you should do to adjust, but it all comes down to a very simple thing. If you can prove you built a big business that has product market fit, that can scale and have strong unit economics, you should always be able to raise. Um, what's more interesting here to me is that this is a robotics startup, right? And historically, you think Canada's well placed to build global winners. We have a lot of machine learning, a lot of AI. We have a lot of people who have traditional robotics engineer automation degrees, especially coming out of University of Waterloo. We have a lot of manufacturers and a lot of traditional industry. But you've seen a few, but not many. We don't have the VCs that want to invest in the early stages or the late stages. One reason historically is it's been a long time to prove these companies out. It's not clear what the moats are. Look, this company's now, started 2014. It's 8 years old, and this is like, let's say, values at 350. It's not been a, it's not a software company that goes to $1 billion in 2 years. So hopefully this changes people's perspective in the space. And we see more money coming in. Also like you also might have to go where the money is. So
Yeah.
they raise money out of Asia. And I think what also I think is very interesting here is lots of companies focus on North America first. Then they say
Hmm.
we're going to scale outside area. But this, Avid seems to have been selling on 5 continents from very early stages. And if you have something that's a universal problem, you might find that culturally, behaviorally, that you'll get adoption somewhere else in the world quicker, and it'll make just sort of, it's hard to execute against, but it may increase your chance of success.
Awesome. I think those are great takeaways for our community. A lot there. We will obviously have a recap of everything in tomorrow's newsletter. That being said, it's another great place to find news, trends, analysis, and a lot of resources and learn about what's coming up for our community, including events. So if you have not already subscribed to the 3 times weekly TechTO newsletter, you can do so at techto.org/newsletter. We're really working on revamping that. I'm getting very excited to launch that soon. Has there been anything really standing out to you, Alex, recently?
Well, I think we're previewing the speakers of Monday's event, which,
Yep.
excited for those speakers. They're not household names. I think, just the preview, the profiles of these speakers are great. You'll get to see
Mhm.
some new names that you never heard of, like Vendor PM or
Yeah.
Paul Campbell, who's returned to the ecosystem, has had success in the Valley.
Yeah, we actually did a nice preview on Vendor PM specifically in our recent newsletter. So if you haven't caught that, we'll do another push on social. But yeah, definitely very excited to continue doing those. Next headline, you touched on Real Ventures. So now let's get into are they really refocusing on Montreal? So let's start with just what's going on there and what's going on with Real
So
Ventures.
this has been a question whispered for about 9 months by a lot of people. Hey,
Okay.
Alex, what's going on with Real? What have you heard? Not necessarily asking me,
Yep.
but they got thrown to the forefront of our tech ecosystem last week when it was announced that Janet Bannister has resigned from the managing partner role and will
Hmm.
transition to part-time role at Real, with John Stokes taking over as managing partner effective immediately. This falls like a few months ago. We had Isaac, who's a partner in Montreal, leave to join Pender
Yep.
Ventures. So this is just the latest. This is like, there's been a lot of questions, not many announcements, but the last 2 big announcements were the managing partner transitioning and the partner leaving.
Definitely. And we did actually talk about Isaac's
Yeah.
move to Pender on an episode of our show as well. So why are these moves significant?
Uh, Real Ventures has been trying to raise a fund for the better part of a year now, and
Hmm.
Janet was leading these efforts. The change in leadership either reflects that they're trying a new fundraising strategy, they may not be trying to raise new fund anymore.
Hmm.
Janet may be tired, so it says, okay, something has to change to raise the next fund.
Hmm.
Um, it's also very interesting that you're going from Janet to John. Janet
Yep.
was the future of the firm. She was based in Toronto. She brought some diversity and perspective of being a female partner. And now you've got a firm that grew out of Montreal or Quebec and
Yep.
started doing stuff across the country, relatively successful.
Mhm.
Trying to build that brand to be a Canadian one, sort of retrenching back to Quebec, just inadvertently, and also from an ecosystem perspective, it's nice to have more female leadership in VC firms.
Definitely. And one question I would just have around this news, and I'm sure other people are wondering, does this mean that they're still actively investing?
Yes and no. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is um, venture firms, when they raise, let's say 100 million, they keep a certain percent of that for follow-on investments in a portfolio company.
Right.
So if they previously invest in you, there's a chance they may invest in you again. I don't know what the case with Avid Robots was. Maybe the fund that invests in them doesn't have any more capital left. So if you're a portfolio company and you'll probably know where you stand, and they probably have capital to invest in you. If you're a new company, they could. I don't know what the situation is. My guess is, depending on how confident they feel about the next fund, they might be able to invest a small amount or what they call warehouse a deal. But they're not, as far as I'm concerned, not actively investing at this point. I hope it changes in the near future.
Right. Okay. So important to note that. And what does this mean overall for just the ecosystem in general?
It's not great news.
Yeah.
You hear the government talk about, and everyone talk about how we solved early stage financing. It's this scale up capital we need right now.
Hmm.
One of the reasons people said it was solved was Real Ventures is an active investor. They've invested in 200 plus companies in this ecosystem.
Yep.
And they, not only that, but they made an effort to spin up different types of funds like Orbit Fund, Front Row Ventures, which had, Front Row Ventures invest in college, university based companies. They did a lot of stuff in the Quebec ecosystem and 77 Toronto ecosystem. So this leaves a hole from an investor, from an ecosystem, from an
Yeah.
imagination perspective.
Yeah.
So it's generally not great news.
Right. And I was going to say they definitely put the Montreal ecosystem on the map for sure, just
Yeah.
given the activity. So yeah, definitely hard news. Lastly, takeaways for founders and what that means for them.
Look, it's you have the macro headwinds of the current environment just making it harder to raise.
Mm-hmm.
This is one less well-backed fund to go to and raise capital from. That they invested quite a few deals a year.
Yeah.
They were, investing particularly on the east coast of Canada. I mean, like Eastern Canada, anywhere from like Atlantic Canada to, let's call it, I don't know, maybe Winnipeg. I know they've done investments on the West Coast, but like there's less one person to talk to locally that's going to be invested in the ecosystem. It's going to be harder to raise. This is also a reminder that, why do VCs also have to fundraise? Like, and it's not easy. It's never easy. And this is why they have certain perspective on who they want to invest in and when they have to have an exit. And just a reminder that, not going to say venture capitalists need lots of empathy from founders, but sometimes it might not hurt to be empathetic for that they have a hard problem sometimes too.
Right. And that the current market's probably affected things too a little bit.
Yeah.
Great, Alex. Thank you so much for breaking that down. Before we move into our last headline, I do like to shout out the Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program at the Smith School, who are kindly sponsoring today's episode. Harnessing AI's potential for competitive performance requires a new type of professional, one who not only understands the capacity of the science, but has the expertise to apply it to organizational needs and strategies. The Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program from Queen's University's Smith School of Business will help you develop the skills to navigate the ethical, economic, and societal implications of AI implementation. This 12-month program can also be completed while you continue to work full-time. Visit smithqueens.com/AI degree to learn more about how you can join their next class. And I will link the website in the show notes and on social as well. So definitely check them out. So next up, I really do like this headline, and I'm excited to talk about this. So BDC is putting $500 million towards closing the gender gap. Some people might be familiar with the gender gap, but maybe you can explain it and also explain it from a venture capital perspective of what that means.
Yeah, so I'll get into that in a second, but it's just, this is almost karma. So you get some negative news about the ecosystem and you get some really positive new one. And
Yes.
This is actually quite big news. So the gender gap is basically, one way to explain traditional venture financing. If you look in Canada, it's estimated about around 5% of venture capital is being invested in women-led companies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know if that's the number of companies or capital, because those are different numbers, but either way, it's not huge. It's, believe it or not, it improves. North America at one point they were saying it was 2%. So, but it's 2% or 5%. It's not near gender parity. It's a huge gap that has to be dealt with. And, I don't care what your personal beliefs are, but this just tells me that capital can't be allocated completely efficient, because I think everyone has the ability to create a venture, hypothetically, everyone could create a venture scale company. Right. So if we're only funding one part of the half the ecosystem, that means we're leaving money on the table.
Right. So like QBDC now. So what are they doing about it? And also, how is the money being used to close the gap?
So they announced last week that they're putting 500 million Canadian towards solving this gap. So this is a follow-up. In 2017, they put 200 million into Women in Tech Fund, which invests directly into startups. Yeah. This 500 million is based on learnings from that, and they're calling it the Thrive Venture Fund and Lab, and it'll invest over 6 years. So so the number, just side note here, feels a bit inflated, because usually investment periods are 2 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years, so it just seems a bit longer. But either way, this is a huge number. $300 million will be direct investments that will back firms at the seed, Series A, and Series B stages. $100 million for lab for women, which will fund pre-seed startups and non-venture models for non-venture scale opportunities. $100 million will be invested in women-led Canadian funds that have a woman as a GP or in partner role.
I think that's awesome. And what are maybe some of the things that remain to be answered, like some of the questions that are still up in the air?
Who are the investment professionals at BDC running these funds? Some of these are known, but with this much deploy, measures would be more. What qualifies as a women-led startup? There was a lot of questions around this with Women in Tech Fund, a lot of controversy. People say it has to be co-founder with X% ownership. It says some people say it has to be a CEO. Not an easy answer. And also what happens if it's a women-led startup that's less women-led startup when they go to raise a B round and they invest in the A round. And then what will the lab look like? It's interesting description, but it's still very high level. So lots of questions here.
Right. And also lastly, takeaways for founders and specifically maybe some of the female entrepreneurs or founders that are listening right now.
Well, I'll give you takeaways and I'm going to make one bold prediction. Sure. It's never been easy for a woman to raise a venture capital.
Okay. Yeah.
This doesn't solve it, but there's now a specific place. So they're trying to help in three ways. One is there's a specific place you can go talk to that can write a check. And by putting $100 million to women-led Canadian funds, there'll be an incentive for more female partners. And I do think, some people say that, hey, going to someone that doesn't understand your problem, like if you're talking about lactate consultants, or just to pick a random one, it's good to speak to someone that may have had this problem or experienced this. They'll have more empathy and understand it. So you're now hopefully having a few more places to go raise money from. So that's good and should help address the gap. One thing my guess is this is a crown corporation that gets its funding from the government. They want to provide a return, but this capital is not only based on economic returns. Again, without looking at the detail, well, more traditional funds have, ROI goals. So to understand what it's like to get capital from them and how to work with the BDC, you'll have to better understand their incentives. And like any investor, you have to make sure you're aligned with them. I know of other programs where there's a lot of reporting that comes with it, but it's a small price to pay to get capital. So just the alignment, just like I say with any investor, know who you're getting the money from, know what their alignment knows what makes them tick. It'll help you raise money from them, help you make sure you're aligned with them. It'll be interesting how these funds work with the current ecosystem and what reputation they have with non-Canadian investors. Are they, how do they fill the short-term gap by providing capital? But then there's, people worried that there's an adverse selection who they fund. I don't think there will be, but it's very easy for people to be considered that. So I think they have, these funds, particularly direct fund, will have a very fine line between A, investing in companies and being a strong signal to them, and B, not crowding out traditional funds. Like, let's just pick on Real right now. Sorry, because they're top of mind. But 5 years from now, if Real's gone from investing in 30% women-led companies to 20%, hopefully there's not, the reason is not because this Thrive Fund's being more aggressive and being backing all women founders. And I don't think that should be the case, but there'll be a lot of potential PR and political things that have to be resolved with the ecosystem to make sure this is a net benefit, which I think it should be. I'll make a bold prediction.
Sure.
I would not be surprised to see some partners or senior partners leave their current firms and start solo capitalist firms because there's now someone more that wants to back women in partners, right? So it might be, you might see some new net fund formation with funds that are either struggling to raise or just there's a lot of partners and someone's looking to get promoted quicker.
Well, thank you, Alex. Nonetheless, I am happy that we are talking about a little bit of positive news on the episode.
There's a lot of positive news. 500 million and to address the gender gap. I wish we could say something like this every week.
I know. And I just feel like the focus has been a lot of, the current market and layoffs and things like that. So this is great. I'm very excited about this news. This is awesome and exactly what the ecosystem needs. Before we go, I want to highlight some amazing events we have coming up for the TechTO community and for the ecosystem as well. So if you enjoyed our last installment of the summer social, the very last one we had, we're back again at 111 on October 3rd. The speaker lineup, as you alluded to, Alex, maybe not known as much within the ecosystem, but we have Matt McClellan of Harp, Emil Brilla, Vendor PM. I'm really excited to hear what he has to talk about Vendor PM. CEO at Pronti AI, Mila, and also Paul Campbell, the CEO at Elevi Inc. The lineup is great. The content sure to be amazing. What are you looking forward to, Alex?
I'm looking forward to the deep conversation with Paul Campbell. I think he's someone that grew up in Canada, left, had success in Seattle, had success in the Valley, who's a scout for True Ventures that's not known. He's running a cool healthcare company. I think the far side there is going to lead to a lot of interesting insights.
Definitely. I'm very much looking forward to that. And yourself and Jason will also be there October 3rd, next week on Monday, 6 to 9. Get your tickets on our website. And another event that I do want to just touch on a little bit is October 12th. We have a virtual TechTO talent event. If you're looking for a job, want to be put in front of employers who are actively hiring, or just hear what's going on in the current market and how you can best utilize your skills to find a job or find talent, that's the perfect event to attend. Lots of insight there. And Alex, you'll also be hosting that one. So very, very excited for that. Thank you again, Alex, for your insight and running us through these topics from the week. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in today to TechTO Quick Takes. We will be back next week, same time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And until then, we'll see you on the inside.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea.
So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.